dead. He's right here. He's right here. I need some help over here. Anybody?
On your left.
Bro, keep up.
You're the slowpoke, not me.
Funny how girls always have to save the boys.
No way.
Are you kidding me?
Hey, enough chit chat. We got a game to win.
Excellent. Welcome, everyone. Here's the official start of our webinar. And of course, you can see that we are just fun, friendly, passionate people that are committed to doing great things for kids and in the world. So you can see our great faces here. We're not just some sort of corporate kind of people that are just trying to, we are great people with passion and we care about grammar. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Chris Bechtel. I will be your host today. We've got a great webinar for you. I'm going to kind of briefly just go over the agenda and some housekeeping, of course. So we are recording this webinar. So, in case you missed something, want to rewatch a section, of course, would like to share with a colleague or someone else. We will be emailing everyone that registered a link to the recording within a couple of days here, so you can rewatch and share. But we got a great lineup of speakers today and a quick agenda that I'm going to go over with you now. We are going to have about 10 to 15 minutes if at all possible, for questions. So if you do have questions as we're going along, feel free to type them into chat. We'll see if we can answer them as we go, but obviously if we don't, I'll be reviewing all the questions and sharing them with our speakers so we can get some answers for all of you. But I'd like to switch to the agenda. Maybe Richie, you can switch us to the agenda slides. We can go over that real quick. But we're gonna, first up, I wanna introduce, of course, our terrific lineup of speakers. So, which I'll introduce each one of them as they have some sections, but obviously you've met our fearless leader, co-founder, CEO, Alan Sitomer, who is a former Teacher of the Year. He is the lead, and CEO of Mastery Coding. I am trying to read my notes and do this all at the same time, so bear with me. But he doesn't need any more of an introduction. He's a fantastic individual.
Oh, keep going. Tell him about how I levitate and save orphans and all the good.
Exactly. He also can dress up in many different sporting costumes. So you guys should definitely watch one of our videos if you have not. Follow him on LinkedIn. He does produce some terrific content that he shares in his LinkedIn channel along with videos. All about trying to create resources and help and guidance, right? So I encourage you to follow Mr. Alan Sitomer on LinkedIn. We also, of course, have our lead pathway esports architect, who is also a founder, player, and captain of the top 25 ranked Overwatch college sports team, our very own Richie Conti. Thanks for joining us, Richie. And Richie will have a section here. Top 25, not 30, yes. We also have our Pathway Esports Architect and Esports Coach of the Year of the top 25 ranked Overwatch collegiate team, an esports writer since 2015, featured on ESPN, Yahoo. We have our very own Noah Waltzer joining us. And last but certainly not least, we have Marcy Sparks, who is an esports coach and a Soccoro ISD library services coordinator. So she is out there in the field with kids, really actually doing these things. You're going to hear about her actual experiences with the kids, with teachers, how it's working, and how it's actually creating a real pathway to future careers. So those are our great speakers. Now I'd like to kind of move on quickly. Real quick before I kind of get into the content, it would be helpful for us to help you all is we just got a couple of quick poll questions. So, normally we'd love to do sort of a poll, like quick, you could check a box, but in the absence of setting that up, maybe you all can just type into chat. Just a quick answer would be helpful for us to know, what's your experience with esports? And it could broadly be like, hey, I'm expert, or I'm brand new, or somewhere in the middle. So it would just help us be able to tune our content to you, and I'm sure there might be some mix of those, and most of you probably are fairly new, but any of you that have some experience in it, just drop that in. Would be helpful for us to know so we can tune some content. So as many of you that can give us that little feedback would be super helpful. Obviously, all of the chat goes straight to us as the attendee, as the presenters. Same thing with your questions. So anything you have there, please let us know. I'll give you all just another few moments, and the team, you guys can kind of take a look. Looks like, of course, as expected, most people are pretty new to esports. We probably have, if we have kids ourselves, we all have seen the gaming and seen all of it, but what is esports, right? And we're going to get to that. And how does it work as a pathway? Great. Thank you all so much for that. And we're going to quickly pivot to the next sort of poll question, which again, you may not know the answer to, but maybe to your best guess. And this is somewhat of a broad question, but in a sense is like, what are you looking for? And this might mean you're looking to really ensure that kids have a real pathway for future career. Maybe you're looking for just getting better connectedness with kids in this time because we're everywhere. What do you feel that you're looking for, right? Maybe you're looking for supplementing, a sports program that may or may not be able to resume come this year. Obviously, or maybe you're looking to kind of really, again, capitalize on kids are clearly gaming. So how do we turn that gaming into something that's productive, right? So great feedback. Thank you all for typing that in. This is really helpful. And I think can also relate to very much of what our hypotheses are in terms of what, all of you are looking for to help kids and what the students themselves are looking for. Great. Wonderful. So we'll give you another couple minutes. Obviously, we'll switch slides here, I think, in a moment. But if any of you have not added anything, or if you want to add anything more, please feel free to do so in the chat. This is great. All right. So next up is really I'd like to introduce Alan, who is going to talk to us really about mastery coding, what we do, and why esports? Why now?
Great. Well, thank you, Chris. So my name is Alan Sitomer, and at first blush, the question is there academic credibility in bringing esports onto a campus? Because, at the end of the day, the kids having fun with esports is all wonderful. But what I saw when I was first sort of introduced to the idea of synthesizing kids' passion with sort of efficacious aims. And I guess by efficacious aims, it's a fancy way of saying what Joseph Campbell used to say. How do you, follow your passion? These kids love the games. I mean, coronavirus hit and all they did was spend hours and hours and hours on the games. But as you'll see in sort of the next slide right here, we've got sort of a variety of things going on in American education right now, which is number one, that our curriculum is viewed by the students as being lined up to like Ronald Reagan's presidency. You know, it's like we're teaching them things that are like, when's the last time we had a refresh on it right here? And the solution that we try to tether our Pathway Esports program to is, how do you use the love of gaming to build a gateway to coding, and a gateway to computer science, and a gateway to the emerging technologies, and a gateway to sort of that industry 4.0 aspect of the world, which is just exploding right in front of our eyes. Because these kids, their passion for gaming is really rooted in a passion for interacting in a digital world with new tools that our modern curriculum is not bringing into the classroom. So, you know, for me, I kind of like, take a big bite of the apple, and can we take something that is so high energy and so exciting for kids and really build a pathway to career opportunities in an exploding industry? And as you'll see from the next slide right here, the opportunities are there. The workforce opportunities are gigantic across the board right now for students who own the technology skills that are in demand. And when I say in demand, the question is by whom? By everybody. Okay, Dunkin' Donuts is looking for data scientists. It's not just like sprinkled donuts and things like that in a count. They are measuring at 3:15 p.m., you know, on Tuesdays, the volume of chocolate, you know, eclairs versus this. And if you're not thinking that way at Dunkin' Donuts, you're not going to be CEO very longer. And if you can find a way to drive the efficiency through the programming skills and things like that, you're going to be an in-demand worker. And if we look at the job displacement that is going on in America right now, it's almost not, or it's a tragic irony that there are millions of people unemployed and there are swaths of high-paying jobs open. But our schools didn't teach these kids how to be prepared for that. And that's literally why mastery coding is going to make a really, really big effort to use the power of esports and the love of gaming to learn how, as you'll hear more in a little bit, how to create those orbital opportunities for auxiliary jobs. You can become a software engineer, there's game design, there's legal, there's marketing, there's sponsorships, there's business, there's advertising. There's so many career opportunities that can be born out of harnessing the academic power that exists inside of esports. That right there, Chris, is why, you know, like once we saw this, it's just wildly exciting. I guess I should talk a little bit more about how we do it, right? What's the master plan? My master plan exists with a triangle, okay? And the triangle is, you know, begin with the end in mind. What do we want for our students? We don't want to tell them what to do. We want to avail them of opportunities to do the things they want to do. Okay. And one of the things you'll see here is high paying jobs. Now, I work with a lot of students from Title I backgrounds and trying to break the cycle of intergenerational poverty through education that can provide pragmatism. When you understand, whether it's web development, Unity certified programmer, etc., the courses that we offer at Mastery Coding, when you have those skills, you can literally be the first in your family to have things like health insurance, a 401k, and so forth like that. And when you work with kids who sometimes come to school not having had breakfast in the morning, that right there is noble work. Of course, on the other hand, college. I have kids myself, right? Like college. You want them to get in. How do you diversify their sort of application in a way that they stand out like a sore thumb? And when your students have a digital portfolio of their work, like let's say they've built virtual reality like we, sort of use in our curriculum, and they have a GitHub account with a, digital portfolio, and they're industry certified in Unity, it's not just test scores and grades anymore. I mean, the school systems across the country are doing away with the SAT. Ohio State University, the UC system, they're not going to be using these as metrics anymore to evaluate graduating seniors. So the question as an educator is, what opportunities are we availing to our students to diversify their college resume? And extracurricular activities, at first blush, you would think esports, captain, whatever, but there's also, I handle the budget, the tournament, the social media, the this and that, and I blended in entrepreneur skills and all these different things that we offer in our academic program. Like I said, with Pathway Esports, we're trying to have our cake and eat it too.
Terrific. And obviously, if anyone has more questions about, other curriculum, obviously, and we will talk about what Pathway Esports is, because it's not curriculum, it's a toolkit, an academic toolkit. We'll talk about that specifically here right in a moment. But I did want to just quickly mention, for those of you not aware, obviously we have full curriculum, and you can learn more obviously at masterycoding.com about all of our full curriculum. We also obviously are talking about sort of a game and make program currently. Alan, do you want to just touch on that real quick?
Yeah, so the Game and Make program is, we're the only ones who have it. So we offer the esports, and we, like, for first-time coaches, I saw in the chat box, like, I'm interested. We know the kids are in it. The kids, trust me, the kids are knocking on doors for this stuff right here. So part of my great experience in providing professional development is making sure whether it's the coach or the teacher at the front of the room can be highly successful. So as you'll hear Richie and Noah particularly speak to later, we spoon feed everything. So first time coaches, it's a nice warm blanket, a warm cup of milk, and a chocolate chip cookie, because the last thing you want to do is have no good deed go unpunished, right? And I'll be the esports coach, and then you're up till 11:45 on a Tuesday night dealing with esports. Bzz, we make it work for you really simply. That's the game part right there. But then the maker part is leveraging the students' interest in the games to, maybe they could create their own games, or maybe they could learn the computer science principles underneath these games, or maybe it's whether it's 3D design or the STEM, the engineering aspects. There's so many rich opportunities that are robust that we synthesize both of those on campuses with the esports program and our coding courses, so that the vibrancy, and of course there's a diversity in the community, and we're all about equity and equitable access. So that's sort of the game and make package that we've put together for school districts across the country.
Terrific. Yeah, and that's fantastic. And obviously, if anyone wants to learn more about the other curriculum, please visit our website. And obviously, at the end of this webinar, we'll encourage all of you, if you'd like to learn more about any of the programs, to talk to us specifically one-to-one, and we can arrange that. So now, onward, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, and that is Rich Conti. Welcome, Richie. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
So Richie's going to talk to us a bit about, how have we designed this academic toolkit, as Alan was saying, to really make teachers and students successful in esports, right? Because as you saw, most people are brand new to it. It's like, where do we even start? So what are we providing in this toolkit, and how have we made it easy to be successful?
Sure. Well, before we can get into that, I first just want to express the growing industry of esports, because it is absolutely massive, and especially in this world of COVID, where many traditional sports are being shut down, esports is one of those that is continuing to chug on, and it's growing bigger and bigger. This is actually a little bit outdated, but already you could see that the League of Legends tournaments are performing better in viewership than something like the MLB or NBA. And not only is the viewership rising, but we also see the opportunities in esports rising as well. So college scholarships are being awarded more and more every year. It's something that I'm sure Noah and I wish were available to us when we were in high school as well. But it's a fantastic opportunity, and the more students that are able to get into esports, the more they're able to take advantage of these opportunities, and more that they might even grow, right? So we want to get more and more students aware of the fact that there are college scholarships for esports. Not only is it the college opportunities, but there are also the career opportunities as well. As Alan had mentioned a little bit earlier, but it's not just the players that are involved with esports. Someone has to create the game. Someone has to broadcast the game. So there's coaches and analysts that figure out how things can work better, right? And move forward with the team. IT support, advertising, business development. So there's a lot of different orbital careers that are involved with esports as well. And that's something that we really try to express in the Pathway Esports program as well.
And hey, Richie, just a quick question on that one for everybody. That, you know, just so they have clarity, this is like, and again, because I think a lot of this is about getting student participation, right? And I think just to address real quick, the fact is the kids in the esport, they don't have to be gamers, right? Like we've got kids that are just organizers. We've got kids that are, you know, right? Like there's a lot of different opportunities for kids to get involved. Clearly there's a pathway for these careers in the future, but there's ways that they can get involved right now. They don't have to be a game player. Correct? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, people generally, the students that are getting involved with the esports team do enjoy gaming in some capacity, right? But the key note is that they don't have to be a good game player, right? Everyone that tries out for the team isn't going to make the team, but they could be involved in all those orbital careers in terms of, hey, even if you're not the best player, if you can understand the game, you could help with coaching, you could help with organizing, you can be the strategy person and do some research for us, right? And so that's kind of where that engagement is for all students. Anyone that wants to participate in a school, even though there's an X amount of slots on a team, there's no limit to who can participate.
Mm-hmm. And in some ways, there's actually more opportunity than in some other sports, right? Because there's all these ancillary roles, right? Where, you know, maybe on the soccer team, there's only a few, you know, there's not that many options, but there's a lot more in this category, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And we're going to talk about that specifically. I believe we actually, let's see, did we get our slides? So whose slide is this? Because
yeah, I'll speak to the current landscape. So right now there are millions of kids at home gaming, and they want an esports team on their campus. And many middle and high schools are beginning to recognize the benefits of esports. But the number one barrier to entry that we saw is that, as some of you have expressed in the chat, is that they've never done esports before. They don't know how to start and run a successful esports team on their campus. So just speaking to the Pathway Esports Toolkit, we're dedicated to creating a one-stop solution with start to finish guidance on how to form a team, run a team, and then reach those academic and career opportunities that we were speaking to earlier. And again, Noah and I have been through this before. We started and managed our Overwatch team in our university. So we are trying to distill all the trial and error that we went through down into this toolkit for schools to use, right? So in terms of forming a team, we cover everything from hosting tryouts to hosting like scrimmages with other teams. We talk about the different roles, everything that you'll need. Running a team, again, hosting scrimmages, doing day-to-day practices, getting into different tournaments, that sort of stuff. And with the career and academic opportunities, we'll be creating a complete list of colleges that offer different esports scholarships. So some of the benefits, as mentioned, there are over 200 universities that now are offering esports scholarships. We are also seeing elevated academic performance for students that do get involved with esports. And there is a minimum GPA in order to participate, just like traditional sports, but also just in the sense that those students who get involved with extracurricular activities are more likely to attend school and more likely to graduate because they're more involved with their campus, right? There's also the fact that esports is very much fostering diversity and equity and inclusion on campus. There's a great statistic: 80% of students who get involved with an esport team on their campus haven't gotten involved with any other extracurricular activity. And it's really reaching a group of students that otherwise wouldn't be involved with their school, right? Again, I like to say that esports is a great equalizer in the sense that everybody's the same when they're in the game. Doesn't matter your race, doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter your height. When you're in the game, it matters your skill, right? Doesn't matter who you are. In terms of computer science careers, as Alan had mentioned, esports is a stepping stone to computer literacy. So it's really creating a space for students to get comfortable with managing software, comfortable with managing hardware. And this can be a later stepping stone down the line into further careers. So students who can get really into gaming and really want to do more with games, well, what are all games made with? They're all made with code. So many students who get very into gaming end up learning how to code to create their own games. And that's sort of the game and make package. We want to create that stepping stone for students who are playing the games. They know where they can go to make the games as well, which is our other curriculum as well. So that's kind of the dichotomy there. Now, just a general overview of the stuff that our toolkit has is the comprehensive starter kit for first-time coaches, health and gaming safety protocols, equity-based educational practices for fostering that diversity on your campus, college scholarship guidance and resources, practice guides for socio-emotional learning, and a toolkit which is available 24/7 on the same LMS that we host our other curriculum as well. So if you do have students taking our coding curriculum, they could swap right over to Pathway Esports, or vice versa. If you have a student on Pathway Esports, they could very easily go over into our coding curriculum as well. And we cover the hardware setups for major sports as well.
And so, Richie, this is great stuff. I think just to clarify for everybody, because again, people are new to this, right? And there are other sort of esports programs out there. So maybe, you know, and some, I think in particular, just a distinct in terms of they're more of the platform to set up an esports league and that type of thing. So just maybe if you can address just quickly, like, how are we different and, you know, where are we fitting in? Clearly, I think this slide does make a very good job of being clear that we're providing a toolkit, right? But any other details might help everybody understand where we fit.
Sure. So again, the number one thing that we saw in the current landscape is a lot of other esports leagues for schools already assume that you have a team and you know how to run a team. So that's one of the number one things that we focus on is the setup for these games. We teach you how to set up these 9 titles, which are the tier 1 esports. They're all school friendly. We go in depth on hardware and software, and really we go into how to form a team for these 9 in particular. We also go into more specifics on how to train yourself as a gaming athlete, but this is more holistic. This is applied to any esport that you might want to play. However, we very much want to guide schools with how to set up these games as well. Additionally, all of our content is available on that LMS that I was just talking about. So it's easily dispersed to whoever might need it, whether it be the coaches, whether it be the students. All this stuff is available 24/7 on our learning content platform, right? And available, again, as the guide whenever you need help for something.
And Chris, I just wanted to jump in for 1 sec because it's a really good point that Richie made that can't be lost for the CTE folks, especially. Like, how we're different is that a lot of people, you know, playing the game, having fun, but, you know, as an educator, as an administrator, as a parent, you know, I want tangible results for my kids that are measurable, that are pointed in the right direction, that really are sort of stepping into ways. And I couldn't be more proud of some of the content that Richie and Noah have put together on the career readiness front. It's unparalleled. I've been doing this a long time, and we just offer things that nobody else has that are really beneficial for all kids to learn, whether or not they understand esports. There's fundamental things going on, from computer science to the literacy, financial literacy, budgeting, what's going on in the world of 3D, social media marketing, etc. That just being in the soup of the curriculum is beneficial to any of the kids that are participating.
And to that point, I think the next slide here is a really great one, because it's like it lays out like the map, the pathway to a tournament.
Yeah.
Right?
So yeah, that was another thing that I wanted to mention, that we sort of stand out from other esport programs that might be out there, is they'll create the tournaments for students to play, but we, instead of just giving a fish to a student, we want to teach the student how to fish, right? We want to teach them how to build those tournaments. Through this, not only do they get to practice, but they'll learn those different CTE focuses. They'll be able to actually apply their broadcasting knowledge that we teach them. They'll be able to actually take a leadership role and run the operation, and be an event staff or manager, right? They get to work out the budget for their tournament and try to make revenue on it. And we again, this is in the curriculum, but we are also hosting, up at the top there, you'll see a series of webinars for students and coaches to help them through this process as well, before there's this big tournament weekend where they could host their own tournaments as well.
And so now that's great stuff. And obviously everyone, if you have additional questions, for Richie, or Alan, of course, definitely feel free to type them in a chat about any of this stuff so far. We will endeavor to get to as many of them as we can. But next up, I'd like to bring in Marcy, who has some real world experience actually doing all of the things we were just talking about. So welcome, Marcy. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you. I'm really excited because esports was brought to our district just this past year. Just for some basic info, Soccoro ISD is in El Paso, Texas. We are a Title I school, Title I school district, and we've had a lot to deal with this year with the Walmart shooting and COVID, and even with all of that, our esports teams have been very successful. So one of the things that I just want to clarify is that while I didn't coach kids on like the weekly basis, I more coached the coaches on how to get ready for that. And I helped host a lot of the events that the kids were playing. And so some of those things were kind of more what I facilitated for them. And our goals at the beginning were because we had started to hear rumors that in Texas that they might make esports a UIL sanctioned event. And if that were the case, we wanted to make sure our kids had an opportunity to join before all of a sudden it's a sport, but we don't have any activities or any way to organize it. So when we started, we did applications based on UIL. We looked for, the kids had to sign contracts to talk about the kind of, they're representing the school, they have to have good behavior, they have to have a good digital footprint. That was part of the criteria. So we could talk about digital citizenship, because one of the things that people are afraid about is that the gaming community can be toxic and misogynistic and all of these things. And so how could we counter that through our program? So we were going to educate, and that's the advantage of it being in K-12, is that we have an opportunity to get control of that message and show how to do it better. So we know that all sports have trash talk and all of that. It's a little different online because it's there forever and they capture it forever. So those were great lessons built in that our coaches kind of facilitated. And one thing I want to say that I was really appealed to esports is the way that it's naturally all the best practices. So when you think about Socratic seminar, you have your students leading in an activity. So let's say they're playing a game. But then you have the other kids on the peripheral looking at their strategy. What are they working on? How are they doing it? And they're leading that. And the coach is just facilitating that. So when we were looking for coaches, and just to be clear, I'm the library services coordinator. So you're probably wondering how I got in esports, but it's because we appeal to all of our students. We're open for all of them, and we wanted to make this an opportunity for all kids to join. So because of that, our application was centered. We wanted to make sure we had girls. We wanted to make sure we had a diverse community. We had kids that didn't speak any English on the team. And that was important because they were still able to function as a team, even with that barrier, because there was opportunities for the kids to learn how to communicate differently. And so all of that helped build in these best practices so that the first half of the semester, we could focus on playing the game, practicing. The league had them playing every week. So they only had every day was a tournament or a practice, tournament or practice. And so by the time we got to the spring, our goal was to lighten up a bit because of testing, because, we do a lot of testing in Texas. So it became like, well, we have to back off, but that's when we really wanted to focus the kids on building a portfolio, researching jobs and college and career opportunities. Luckily, our local university started a club, the El Paso Honey Badgers, and they reach out across the whole city for teams. And so those were our networking to help our kids. And then we put together a challenge for them. We asked every team to submit a tournament plan that we could have for the end of the school year. But of course, COVID-19 shut our schools down, so all of their plans were kind of out the window. It was going to be a live tournament, so they were going to have to set up all the materials and everything, invite and determine what game they were going to play. But in the end, we decided to host it for them. So we ended up having an end-of-year Memorial Day tournament at the end. And I don't know if that was everything I was supposed to answer.
This is great.
Tell me, Chris.
You are obviously, you're fantastic. So everybody, I mean, she's just authentic, clear.
Turning red.
Yes, I think it's just great. I think a couple of questions that might help everybody would be, and you touched on everything, but I think again, just a little bit about the coach's experience, right? So and clearly you're the library services coordinator, it's not like, you're a big, gamer yourself, but clearly you have some interest. But how about what kind of experience did some of the coaches, who did you get to coach and what was their experience and how much did they have to do?
So we had our librarians in the high schools be our coaches. There are 2 librarians at each high school. And so, so they were our primary contact. They did all the initial training at the beginning of the year. But I did tell them that they could recruit. And it was pretty easy. Once they started advertising, there were teachers that were like, oh my God, I wish we had this when I was in school. Mm. And they volunteered because this year we didn't have a stipend. And it was after school. Yeah. But it was very exciting for them to come and help. And in these pictures that you see, the guys that are casting it are actually teachers. And they're hosting the tournament for everybody. And this was at our Phantom and Comic Expo in November. So they kind of helped make it. And what I could tell you is that my coaches didn't know how to play League. And that was one of the issues we had with when we were setting it all up is we had to pick a game that we could play off the computers our kids had. Right. And League of Legends was one of those games. Mm. So not all the kids knew that game. And right. the librarians didn't know that game. But they were still able to get everybody on task and keep them playing. But until they heard the casters, the coaches were like, they didn't know what to cheer for. But then when the casters started doing it at the event, then all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, you should have seen the librarians were like screaming. They were hoarse at the end, cheering on their teams. It was great.
That's fantastic. And now, do you wish that you had a toolkit such as the one that, we're presenting here? How much more would you have been able to do and help you and help everyone if you had something like this?
Well, I think just the tangible outline would have been great. I mean, we tried to give them some direction, what practices would look like and how they could incorporate SEL activities. We asked them to stretch with the kids ahead of time before they started. But because it wasn't structured in a sense that those were just recommendations, not all the teams did it the same, but it would have been great if there was more structure that they could have followed. So even if they were busy doing something else when the practice started, that the kids could have taken over a little bit better. So right. That was one. I do see that one of the questions was how much did it cost? And I can say because we used all the equipment that our district already had, the only thing we paid for was to join a league. And that was about $4,500 for our 6 schools to have 12 students on a team. Well, 2 teams of 12s with backups. So that was all we paid for. But do I wish that we had more money to buy the cool systems? Absolutely. The kids would have gone crazy if they had all of that. And some of our kids don't even have internet at home. So this was their only opportunity to play the game. And that was something that when we did surveys after the fandom event, some of our kids were saying that they wouldn't have been friends with these guys before. But having this opportunity has really made a difference, especially because they otherwise wouldn't have gotten to play any game because they don't have internet at home. Mm-hmm. So that's, it has made a difference for some of those kids too. And then we did buy them jerseys. So, t-shirts. So that was another expense. But overall, it wasn't overwhelming. The district kind of covered it. It really depends. If you start at a campus level, you might have to do fundraising. But overall, because we tried to do it district-wide, we were able to cover some of those costs.
And I just want to speak to the cost for a second, because there's a lot of creative ways that we can help you out. If you need hardware, if you decide for whatever reason that you want to sort of build a gaming center in your library, form makerspace, whatever, and you're like, where the hardware, we can be that one-stop solution. Of course, if you take the game and make package, there's discounts and things like that if there's multiple campuses. So the pricing is incredibly affordable, certainly less expensive than many other teams on campuses. But it's not a one size fits all thing, because as Richie was saying also, that we have some games that are available to be coached that are mobile games. And so there's no hardware costs associated with them. Of course, if you're ready to sort of use a grant maybe that you got and really reimagine a new technology space, which we see some schools doing, where you put in the gaming chairs and the full-on thing, but those can be repurposed to teach like our Unity certification curriculum because of the high-powered computers. So there's lots of ways, and I would just encourage you that if you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out to us, because we can help you find solutions.
We were also thinking it'd be cool if the CTE classes that are building, like the maintenance classes, built us computers as part of their own curriculum, so separate, and then we would just use them. I mean, we were trying to figure out all kind of things because it really is an entrepreneurial kind of mindset to think, how can we fit this into our curriculum now? How can we take what the kids are excited about and use that to our advantage in every single element. So we wanted it at every school, so you could look at what you could have it tie into almost any lesson. There's a writing component, there's a reading component, research. I mean, you can do a small unit for esports in every content area, but there are going to be the kids that want so much more than that. And I think that's what having that structure, that kind of toolkit would really help.
Yeah. And so sort of the final question, obviously, Marcy, you have so much great experience. And again, like if people have questions, we're going to try and get to Q&A here in a moment. So if you have more questions for Marcy, type them in the chat. The real one before I move on to the next speaker, Noah, but one question for you, Marcy, like given the pandemic, and you kind of alluded to it, but I want to make sure that it's repeated in the sense that clearly the bonus would be for kids to be together as you had planned, right? But just the benefit, because given, a lot of us don't know what school is going to look like, certainly for the first half of the upcoming school year. But it sounds like clearly this is something that can be done remotely.
Right. And when we had our Memorial Day tournament, the kids were given opportunities to shoutcast with the teacher, and they loved that. And then they were telling us that, well, we need to have our own YouTube channel, and we need to have our own Twitch channel, and we need to be doing new content every week. And I told them, do that, but you have to be consistent on it. You can't just 1 week, and that's not the way that those kind of systems work. They want to see regular original content all the time. So the kids are starting to think about how they can take it even further than what we were able to offer, which is great. And then they've been practicing together, which is another thing. And because they have already interacted together online, they have each other's, have ways to request scrimmages across the district. And so that's been good. And then additionally, we have one of the big things that we tried to do this whole year was help promote how important esports can be and to give it some credibility, because it's easy to blow it off as just playing a game. But we say that for every sport. We play a violin, we play football, but why not play a video game? And so that was kind of the empowering part for our kids. We told them that they need to stand up for the good that they're doing, representing their school and winning. And so we saw a lot of athletics department coaches cheering our kids on at the end, which was great. And even jealous that they don't get to play during COVID, because, you know, our practices did just start back up, but with all these criteria for spacing and wearing masks, and it's just not the same for them. But I also want to say that I saw recently that some of our professional sports teams are starting to have esport versions of themselves.
Yeah.
So, right. So even a football team in their off season might have other players representing that team in esports. And so I thought that was an interesting twist as well. So ESPN has their own esports channel. And yet they get a lot of pushback too, because it's not the same. And, you know, so part of our thing was making sure that we educated the whole time and that our kids were part of that process.
Oh, thank you so much. This is great stuff. So, I mean, we could keep going, but obviously in the essence of time, we're gonna pivot to Noah, who is also an esports coach, and he's gonna talk to us about, you know, pathways for kids, his experience with college and how esports is, you know, impacted opportunities in college. So welcome, Noah. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Nice introduction. And then thank you, Marcy. Everything you just said was great. And as a coach myself, I resonated a lot with the let's say the turmoil you had to go through to get your students where you want them to be. So appreciate that, and thank you very much.
And please show us your jacket. He is actually.
Oh, yeah. This is my alma mater, Champlain College. This is our old. They just had one of their freshman design students redesign the logo and the jerseys. So these are now a collector's item, I believe. Richie's wearing his. If you want to show that off, Rich.
Yeah, Richie, okay.
Yeah, there you go. He's got the old school design. So careers in esports, right? We've been talking about this the entire presentation. There are many orbital and auxiliary jobs around the esports scene. If this helps, I would like to draw a comparison to traditional sports. If everybody in attendance can picture your favorite traditional sport, if you've got one, and if not, just pick one at random. Doesn't really matter, right? You think of everything that goes into that sports ecosystem, right? All of the content creators, all of the broadcasting, all of the legal teams, all of that is present in esports. Plus, you need people to make the game itself. So esports offers even more opportunities. But it's not just the raw number of opportunities in esports that's really compelling to me. Instead, it's the agency and the way that opportunities are earned. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, if you don't mind. Growing up, I came from a traditional sports background, and I loved writing. Right. I watched ESPN every day. I think when I was in 5th grade, I made a project talking about when I evacuated for Hurricane Katrina. I evacuated to a school in Dallas, and we had to do for like a writing assignment. We had to write an article, like a news article. And I wrote about the Saints and how they were going to beat the Cowboys, because I was trying to trash talk my teacher at the time. But that was really the first time I had ever done sports writing, and it resonated with me. And so we fast forward all the way to my senior year in high school. And I'm still a writing student, but I'm struggling a little bit, right? I'm not great at poetry. I kind of got bored. In terms of short stories, I wasn't Hemingway, but I was like Ernest, you know? So I was able to squeak by with some C's here or there. But when it came to an assignment where I had to write a news article, I wrote about my favorite esports team and the troubles they were going through in their current league. And from that point on, that's all I had to do, right? I would just write content. I would write analysis about my favorite esports teams. And fast forward to 2 years later, I'm in the middle of getting my college degree, and I get picked up by a company that starts working with ESPN, and I go on to write post-game recaps for a bunch of ESPN's different content. I get to help set that narrative. And I'm bringing all this up not because I want to flex, but the key there is that I didn't have to finish my college degree. I found something that I liked, and I just started doing it, and eventually it became a job. And that's what esports really offers. Esports is such a young, vibrant community that it's really, there's no college that offers here's how you become an esports writer 101, right? There's not an esports writing degree. There's no esports degree in general. And in the world of esports, experience is king. And that's what, when we were creating Pathway Esports, I wanted to mainly focus on in order to best prepare students for the future. If we can go to the next slide real quick. This tournament pathway, and really our entire pathway, all revolves around getting students real world experience they can take into either their next steps in college or in their career. And again, it doesn't have to be a career in esports, but esports and video gaming is a framework in which a student can be intimately familiar and comfortable and learn not only about their future and the skills they'll need to progress in their life, but also teaches them life lessons like teamwork, leadership, communication, and responsibility, while exposing them to other people's, other students' experiences and cultures, right? Esports is a big melting pot. On our esports team, we had somebody who came out as transgender, and instead of the rest of our team treating them differently, it sparked a really good conversation about the role of LGBTQ representation in video gaming. And these are things that can happen on any level, right? Because again, it doesn't matter if the person sitting next to me identifies as anything, it doesn't matter who they are. We're trying to play a game, we're trying to win together, right? And we're in this together. Esports builds a real big sense of community that really translates into college and the career, any career opportunity they want going forward. I'll leave you guys with this little thought, but esports as a resume builder is quite possibly the most exciting thing that a college can see going forward, because esports again is such a vibrant young community that anybody who has any experience in it will be a welcome add to any kind of group that they join. And your students are more than capable, and they do this stuff for fun, right? I don't doubt that you have students that plan Smash tournaments on weekends, right? Or who get organized and play pickup games in Overwatch or League of Legends. They're already doing it. They just need guidance, and they need a way they can turn their passion into a productive future. And that's what we're trying to provide here.
Awesome, Noah. So this is great, guys. So we've got about 6 minutes left for questions. So I just want to make sure that we covered everything. Obviously, this is a slide about comparing sort of a soccer team, and I think we kind of talked through that, right? Just to make it clear, again, that you don't have to be an expert in gaming, I think as Marcy had mentioned clearly. So I think sort of the next thing, I just want to before we get into questions, again, want to remind everybody that we are recording it. So if you did miss anything, want to watch anything, share with a friend, we please encourage you to do so. We'll be sending out a link to the recording of this webinar. And absolutely, I'd encourage all of you, if you have more detailed questions that we can't answer in the remaining few minutes, that you reach out to us on our website, at the Contact Us page. There's also a button on our Pathway Esports page, which is about bring esports to your school. Any one of those will get us to you directly. And we have reps, of course, around the country that can talk to you one-on-one. We would hope to do those in person, but of course, given where we are, we can certainly do those remote. So I think there are a couple of questions, and I know Alan has answered some of them in chat, but I think a couple of them that I wanted to make sure at least we stated for everybody is is the curriculum designed for a semester or for a full year? So maybe I'm going to drive this to you, Noah, since tell us about the curriculum and how it was designed.
Well, the toolkit is designed for a full year. A lot of esports tends to be repetitive. After all, it is a sport. So there are only so many different ways you can do practice, right? And part of what we do is we make the grind into constructive grind, right? Students aren't just doing the same thing over and over again, but we use goal-oriented growth, and students will track their own growth through writing exercises and communication with their coaches, both student and faculty coaches, in order to make sure every practice they're working on developing a different skill. So they're constantly improving and growing themselves. And as they keep growing, they learn how to grow. And that helps in every other aspect of their life. That being said, we are working on developing additional content on our end. So it's not just you go through our curriculum and maybe finish early. So then you just practice from the rest of the year out. We're hoping to add stuff like a fully fleshed out history of esports in North America and maybe other parts of the world as well. Just, general background, why not? Can't hurt. And also doing individual game specific help. But that's something we're looking to add in the future.
And also for anybody that has questions, you may not, but your students might, about the games that are listed. Obviously, all of the, talk to us about maybe, Rich, maybe you want to talk to us about the games that we've selected, just so I can diversify our Q&A panel. So Richie, you want to tell us a little bit about the games that are selected and why, and what other, we might be adding future games, but how that might work, just real quick?
Sure, yeah. So all the games that we've selected, as I said, they're all school friendly, being T for teen or below. They're all tier 1 esports, meaning there are like common competitions that are happening often that are
at a competitive level with good prize money, viewership, and advertising.
Right. So there's lots of opportunities in these games as well. We've selected them based on the different startup options, as Alan had said. So some of the games are available for free, like Fortnite, Hearthstone, or League of Legends. And some of them are paid games like Overwatch, which is $20. However, most students who would get involved for an Overwatch team would probably already have an Overwatch game account, and they can use that as well. We've also selected based on varying team size. So if you have a larger esports team, you could choose competition with 6v6, whereas if you have a smaller team, you could choose 1v1 or 3v3 competitions, like Rocket League, right?
Whatever suits your needs.
And then I guess we probably have time for like 2 more questions real quick, and I'm going to save you for last, Alan, because that's just the way it is, to be considerate. So, Marcy, my question to you is, given all of this, now clearly you did not have the toolkit, but if you had the toolkit, and I'm just, maybe you could, what sort of expected outcomes, right? What would you sort of say to those listening that, like, within the course of half a year and then the full year, what would you expect them to see, right, out of the students that are involved? What would they expect, do you think?
Well, what I like about esports is that it is very easy to make it all very public. The difference between playing a video game and esports is the spectators, and I think that's the main focus. So having the pathway, you should be able to see the kids' writing improve, because I would hope that they would be doing that like on a blog or something very visual.
Every day, yep.
Right, and then the other thing I would expect them to see is that change in teamwork. You can see, and so when I say that, the way that they play together and how successful they are as a team will directly be a result of how well they communicate, how well they practice and set the time apart to focus on strategy, whether or not they're looking at their competition, because that was another thing that some of the kids would do, is go look and see how the others played.
Scouting,
yes, and that's important, like in League, because they get to ban characters. So all of those things are very easy for you to see how far they go in that first semester. And in the second semester, as they build up their portfolio, you should be able to see, again, that growth through their win-losses, as well as all the other different things that they should get to try. So if they're trying casting and video editing, then they should have a sample of that. They should be able to look at another team and critique it using the proper terminology, and because that's one thing that, like, your coaches might not all know all the terminology of the game, but your students should by the time they're finished. And so you should be able to see all of that very easily. I mean, this is not a thing that, we talk about soft skills and how hard it is to measure, not in this case, because you will actually see how far they go because of the way that they progress in the game.
And that's something our curriculum encourages as well. It's literally in the first chapter. A great esports coach once told me a good team loses roughly 60% of every game they play, in practice, on stage, when they're practicing on their own in solo queue. The best teams make the 40% of games they do win the ones that count, right? So wins and losses aren't the primary metric for how we're going to determine how we want our students to determine their success, but rather how much they've grown and how much they've improved and how much they've learned. And if you instill a love of growing and learning into a student through video gaming, that carries over to everything else. And then, oops, we accidentally made better students through gaming, right?
And the resilience that they have to have from losing and coming back from that, because especially when they're not playing as a team, it becomes very easy for them to just get sad about it or get angry about it, either one. But having the team really helps them move forward, and having a good coach will help them with that too. So yeah, there's so many great benefits. I can't really think of a negative except that it's not already built in. So you kind of have to do all that work, you know, but anything that comes out that'll make that easier is definitely worth it, because the gains for your campus, your students, will be huge.
Right. And in the curriculum, we have dedicated sections devoted to what to do if your students start losing and they get frustrated, ways to kind of mentally reset all your students. And then we have a plethora of coaching and teaching tips throughout the program.
Yeah, and we just had basic standards. You know, you can't cuss while you're playing the game. That was one of ours. And, you know, halfway through, they started self-correcting. Yo, watch your language, you know. So those are the kind of things that you'll be able to see. And you think, oh, it is a huge deal when they go from just cussing at everything to being respectful of their teammates and everybody around them. Those are big gains.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, again, everyone, you can see sort of the passion that we have and the experience behind this, and because we really think that there's so much opportunity for kids here. And so I just kind of want to transition to Alan here. And I think this next slide a little bit about, there's two things I wanted to have you address, Alan. One is really about, again, the gateway to literacy. And if you could address that a little bit. And then I have one final question for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, so you've heard so much. I mean, the grand design once is about, use the word gateway, Chris. It's excellent because you can see everybody's passion. The kids are more passionate than even the educators about getting involved. But when Marcy was speaking about, you know, grit and mindsets, right? I mean, these are like top of mind in terms of resilience to educators on the socio-emotional front. Of course, we are building bridges to authentic computer science literacy. As you can see, for example, our certifications program that gets you Unity certified is one of the hottest growing engineering jobs out in the workforce today. And these salaries, a lot of kids are being availed of salaries that are more than their parents ever made in their life. So putting it all together is really, really, really like what we are providing. Now, the price that we charge, it's so nominal because we want to make it accessible. So for Pathway Esports as a standalone, it's $29.95 right there. For Pathway Esports as an add-on, it's only $995. And that would be, when I say add-on, it would be to the Game and Make package. So if you're looking at middle school, if you're going to use like web development, you want to teach HTML, CSS, or JavaScript, or maybe you want to go to the high school level and teach Unity, we've got those different programs. So we're really working so super hard to be that one-stop shop where you can get an immense amount of value for, you know, what we think are some of the lowest prices that can be had. Because at the end of the day, we recognize that budget is a very real consideration. And the last thing we want to do is stop equity from happening over budgetary constraints. One of the biggest things that's like sticks in my craw right now, because I do so much work in the Title I communities, is this lack of equity and lack of equitable access. So one thing about our Game and Make programs is that they can work. If you're remote, if you don't go back to school till January, no problem with any of our materials. If you go hybrid, where you have A/B scheduling, where you're on 3 days, then off 2, then on 2 days, off 3, we cover you, no problem. If you are live in class, we got you. But the trick to everything is that we can seamlessly toggle, because let's say you go to an A/B schedule for, you know, and then all of a sudden there's a hot spot and you guys go 100% remote. Or let's say you start 100% remote and suddenly it's like the sky isn't falling and there's a mad rush. Let's get these kids back into school. The last thing you want is to have purchase curriculum that needs to be retrofitted, adjusted, or like we are seamless across the board with all of these things. And it's a credit to our engineers and to all the different team members to have conceptualized us to exist this way. And let me tell you, that conceptualization happened prior to COVID-19 because it's just good practice.
Terrific. And so again, I think I want to thank everybody for their time today. We went a few minutes over, but again, I just wanted to recap. Definitely contact us. We'd happy to give you a one-on-one demo, kind of walk you through the toolkit again and talk you through specific pricing and pricing options, as Alan mentioned, because it is very competitive pricing and there's an option just to get esports, but then you can also add game and make onto it. So there's a real benefit to doing that. You can do that just at the building level or at the district level. Right? So there's a lot of options for you. We will be following up with information on everything I just mentioned via email, including a recording to this webinar. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. Thanks to our great speakers. Please look out for our next webinar. We will continue to be doing those. We will have future webinars, what we're calling sort of unboxing, meaning these will be deeper walkthroughs into some of the curriculum that we have and new curriculum that we are offering. So stay tuned for future webinars so you can learn about that. And thanks again, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe, y'all.